So over the years, you've heard me go on and on about how sedans are dying and crossovers are taking over the world. Now, one way you can confirm that is to actually look at the sales numbers. Take, for example, this 2019 Lexus ES350. Even though it was all new for 2019 and enjoying quite a strong increase in sales, it still only represents the third best-selling model within the Lexus lineup, which, again, it's behind two crossovers. Now, you guys have already seen me do a full review on the ES350 a couple months ago when I was in Nashville. So to literally mix this video up, I'm going to actually introduce a guest host to take over this video, and we're going to be talking about how sedans have changed or how crossovers have changed the design and mission of sedans over the years. Now to do that, I'm going to introduce my colleague Jake from outmotorsports.com, and he's going to talk about what Lexus has done to the design of this vehicle or how it's been changed over the last 10 years because of crossovers.
Thanks, Sophion. I'm Jake. I'm here from outmotorsports.com. I've always been into cars since I was a little kid, but that has manifested into a weekend amateur racing hobby in the Washington, D.C. area and up and down the East Coast. And while I do have a big love for sports cars and race cars, you really can't have either of those without any automaker's bread and butter. Historically, that's been the sedan, which we have represented here by the 2019 Lexus ES350 F-Sport. But in the last 10 years or so, we've really seen crossovers pick up quite a bit. We have that represented by this 2019 Acura MDX A-Spec. Now, this is not a direct comparison of the two models. We just have the A-Spec here for representation. But I would really like to talk about the Lexus and how it's changed the automaker's take on the industry when building new sedans. So I don't know how many of you really remember when Lexus came out. I don't remember the exact moment. Lexus actually launched in the United States right about the same time I was born. Now, Lexus came to the States as a spinoff of Toyota, and they built the LS400, which was intended to compete against the Mercedes-Benz S-Class, and it did. That being said, dealerships realized they needed something else to sell that was not at that lofty of a price point. So Lexus put some leather on a Camry and called it the ES250. That was the first generation, and that was in 1989. Now we're here for the 2019 model year, and this ES350 has gone through into its 7th generation. New for 2019 is the F-Sport model, and I think we can agree this is not just a leathered up Camry anymore. So like I said, new for 2019 with the ES model is this F-Sport appearance package, and this is only available with the ES350, not the hybrid. They did add a little bit of performance to it for the year. However, the biggest deal comes from all the appearance upgrades. You'll notice different, more aggressive bumpers, and that combines with this spindle grille, which really started in the Lexus lineup maybe 5 years ago or so. Everyone seems to have a bit of a love-hate relationship with it. On this ES, I don't know quite how I feel yet. It's kind of growing on me, but I do think that it does work on some of the Lexus models pretty well. As we move around here, you do notice the upgraded triple beam LED headlights. All of the ES models come with LEDs, but these are an upgrade that are about $1,500. You notice we've got gray 19-inch wheels with a 235 millimeter tire width on there. When did you last see a 19-inch wheel with that wide of a tire on a Lexus ES? The answer is probably never. So moving around to the side of the car, you'll notice that there's the F-Sport badging and the black mirror caps towards the front half. For 2019, all ES models are a little bit wider and a little bit lower. That combined with this newer roofline, it's a little more sloped in the back. As crossovers have become more popular and more bread and butter for everyone, the general appeal of the sedan has had to move towards a more sporty marketplace. And that roofline change has really been a part of that with every manufacturer, but Lexus with the ES is finally hopping on board. And as we look towards the back of the ES350, the F-Sport model, again, you see the badging on the trunk lid, slightly different rear bumper from the non-F-Sport models, and then you've got this little trunk lid spoiler. Now, whether this does anything to actually affect the aerodynamics at typical speeds, probably not, but it does really add a little finished appearance to the trunk lid and the overall look of the car when you step back a bit. Now, the one spot where a sedan really struggles against a crossover, similar to this Acura that we have, is that you just don't have the cargo capacity. Case in point, last night I was looking on Craigslist, I found a bookshelf that I wanted to pick up in the middle of DC, and I guarantee you that bookshelf would not have fit in the ES or any similar sedan, folding rear seats or not. So that's why you do tend to see a lot of people gravitating towards these crossovers as they want one car that can kind of do it all and carry it all in their driveway. So under the hood of the Lexus is where I get to nerd out just a little bit. If we go back to that original ES250 that I mentioned, that was a 2.5 liter V6 making sub 200 horsepower. Moving ahead to this 2019 model, Lexus didn't actually change anything powertrain-wise over the standard ES350. That being said, you do get the Lexus brand's 3.5-liter corporate V6 hooked up to their 8-speed automatic transmission. For 2019, this engine makes 302 horsepower. It's about 1 horsepower more than the similar Camry that it can be hooked up to. That being said, your fuel economy does take a slight hit, 22 miles per gallon in the city and 31 miles per gallon on the highway. You get 1 more horsepower, but 1 fewer highway mile per gallon versus the Camry. Like I said, if I can nerd out just a little bit more, if we look at the power to weight ratio of this car, obviously everything has grown in size and weight to go along with that greater horsepower increase from 20, 30 years ago. That being said, this ES350 is quicker than a lot of sports cars were from 10, 15 years back. It does 0 to 60 in 6.6 seconds, and overall should be pretty quick. That being said, all ES350s are front-wheel drive only, so that power to weight only really matters if you can keep that power down. So if we go ahead and start the ES, just typical push-button start, the one thing you'll notice is the gauge cluster. It's a full LCD screen, but it's got this center ring. It's got this center ring that can move from the center over to the right, and you can notice if I push this button, it moves over, and it will show more information on the left versus centered tack with info on the left and right. Pretty neat touch, and the fact that it's actually a mechanical circle there versus just a graphic that moves around is actually pretty neat to me. The steering wheel is something that you touch every day. A lot of people maybe don't care so much, but I really value a nice steering wheel. With the F-Sport model, Lexus added a little bit thicker steering wheel. You've got some thumb pads here, you've got paddles for the 8-speed automatic, and then a very nice cluster of buttons on either side. It can be easy to get just kind of this mishmash of buttons everywhere. I think this is very easy to use, it looks nice, and then the thickness just feels nice in your hands as well. If we move over to the infotainment system, this is an evolution of what Lexus has been doing for a while. They used to have this kind of mouse controller you would move around. That's given way to a touchpad, which really I have a problem with it. It's very hard to use while you're on the move. It's hard enough while I'm sitting here. This car does have Apple Carplay. This is the first car in the Lexus lineup to have it. It does not support Android Auto, but if you're an iPhone user, you'll be pleased to know that you get CarPlay, and surprisingly, it does take up the full width of the screen versus being constrained to just a small chunk of it. This car also has the optional Mark Levinson sound system, which typically, it's a very, very nice upgrade to have, one of the highest quality sound systems in the class and in the market. If you don't opt for the Mark Levinson package, you get a sound system by Pioneer, which is equally nice to listen to. Now, getting into the back seat of this ES, there is quite a bit of footroom back here. Sofyan mentioned to me that when he visited the Lexus media event for this car, they were comparing it to smaller sports sedans like the C-Class, the A4. That being said, this car is actually fairly large. I would more compare it to the likes of the 5 Series, the E-Class, the A6. I've got a ton of leg room. I'm fairly tall. I'm almost 6'2", and I've got both front seats set for my height up front, and I've got all this leg room back here. You've got your typical charging socket here, and then a couple USB charging ports as well. The one thing the F-Sport doesn't have back here that other ES models do have is heated rear seats. That's kind of a letdown for me. I want the better front seats of the F-Sport model. I want all the other interior touches that this car has, but I really like having the heated rear seats for my passengers. So one thing that Lexus doesn't offer on this ES for 2019 is unfortunately no panoramic sunroof. Now, like I've mentioned in other parts of this video, the current Camry also rides on this Toyota platform, and the Camry actually does offer the pano roof. So again, a little bit of a disappointment combined with the lack of heated rear seats on the F-Sport, but not the end of the world. One other thing with the rear seat of the ES350 that is actually quite nice compared to a lot of competitors is the headroom. As we move towards this general sportier vibe with sedans, the roof line generally on a lot of sedans gets cut. And I can't tell you how many Ubers I've gotten into lately where I get in and I just kind of have to sit like this because my head doesn't fit. This car, my back is against the backrest, my legs are out, and I've got actually an inch or so of headroom back here. That's really nice. The other thing with the F-Sport that you'll notice is this really wonderful red leather. I like weird interiors, I like weird interior colors. This works really well for that. I once owned a car with a blue leather interior, and I've owned a car with a red leather interior. A lot of manufacturers get it wrong when they add color because they add a little too much of it and it gets very garish. I think Lexus did a really nice job. It does come up on the door panels, but not too much. It doesn't extend too far down, and then you get a nice complement of black and then the different trim here to kind of balance it all out. And of course the red does extend to the front seats and also to the stitching here on the door panels.
So I hope you guys have enjoyed having Jake host. This has been a rather fun experience for both of us, and it's kind of nice. I'm kind of just kicking back, relaxing.
Yeah, you just get to stand around.
But he needs to talk about his driving impressions for this car really quick. So
yeah, so like I said, this is a very different ES from the Lexus's past. My grandmother on my dad's side actually had an ES 330, I think. It was probably a 2003, 2004. This is the farthest you can get from that car. It's actually a very nice place to spend time. It's very modern inside. It handles very nicely for what it is. It's got these different drive modes between economy and then normal and then sport and sport plus. That fancy gauge cluster that we showed you has the ring that moves around. It will actually change colors and change what information it displays based on the mode that you're in. The other thing that you've got in here, I mentioned when we were outside the car, this car has adaptive dampers. So basically what that means is based on the drive mode that you put the car in, the shock absorbers will either stiffen up or loosen up to give you a different ride quality. If you put it in Sport Plus, they will stiffen up. You'll get a little bit better response through corners, but the car will be a little bit bouncier on a flat but bumpier road. So we'll get out on the highway here and see how it feels. I'm in the normal mode right now, which has everything tuned more for economy and comfort. And then about halfway through, we'll kick it over Sport Plus and see what that does.
And honestly, bouncy is kind of a relative term because this is still an ES. Like,
right,
how,
you're only going to get.
Is this really going to be? But yeah. I imagine it would probably be sporty for someone like your grandmother if she was going to drive this and have
exactly.
Sport Plus. She'd probably say, "Why is this ES ride so rough compared to mine?"
Right. If she were around and had the newer ES, she would not be driving this car in Sport Plus.
But remember, Lexus said for this model we're in, they're trying to appeal to somebody who's under 40 and male.
And to be fair, my grandmother, when she passed, was in her 90s. Okay. So different target audience. Yeah. And I think they've really helped bring that average age down a little bit.
Yeah, especially with this model with the red leather.
I like how much red they have. The new Camry has a red interior available as well. And I haven't seen it in person, but from the pictures, it looks a little bit more. Garish is the wrong word, but it's just a little bit more.
It's a little brighter than this, although Lexus calls this circuit red, and the Camry's red, they just call it red, so you'd have to.
It's definitely brighter.
You'd have to probably park the two side by side to see the differences.
Yeah, but this is a very tasteful, classy red and kind of general appearance here. Now as we accelerate, like I said, this is in the normal mode. If you put it into Sport Plus, a lot of cars are doing this now where the car seems to get louder. Some cars actually have a flap in the exhaust that moves and makes the physical exhaust get louder. This car does what a lot of others do, where it just changes the noise coming out of the speakers to mimic the engine's sound.
Synthesizer.
Yeah. So whether you like that or not, it's something that happens. It's not super obtrusive. I'm going to go ahead and click this over to Sport Plus. There's just this little knob here. And then if I put the shifter over, we are in maximum attack mode in our ES350 F Sport. And I've got the paddle shifters here. I've got the heads-up display, which is really nice. Every car should come with one of these, frankly. But if I go ahead and downshift it a little bit and put the hammer down, it's a little louder than if you had it in the normal mode. Still not super obtrusive, especially not at highway speeds. So,
no, and really all you hear is just the induction howl. Like, it's an amplified induction howl, so there's not anything with the exhaust. I think it sounds okay. Like, I'm okay with amplification or synthesized sounds as long as it sounds good. Like, I had the Insight last week before this, and it sounded terrible. It was a CVT within sport mode. It was louder. It just made the engine noise scream at you even more, and that's something that I just didn't want to hear. But this is okay.
Yeah, well, and really with something like an Insight, it's kind of like, what's the point? That is a car, unlike these, where these are all trying to be a little bit sporty. The Insight is going for maximum economy, and why would you bother cranking up the noise on a car like that? So, But yeah, like Sofyan said, this is induction noise, and it's not bad. I don't mind it.
So how does it feel going through this like little sharp or like little curve right here? It's
Well, I'm getting on it a little bit more here. For being an ES, a car that you would not normally think is really tuned for corner carving, it really takes a corner pretty flat. And this is, again, in Sport Plus with the dampers tuned up a little bit. Not a ton of body roll. Obviously, we're at highway speed. These are bigger sweeping curves. You're not really at any sort of limit where you'd feel it understeer greatly. That's where a front-wheel drive car will show its weakness. But we might hit an off-ramp or something here coming up where you could see a little bit more of that. But it does definitely feel much improved over the ESs of past.
By the way, you might want to click it one more up.
There we go. Now I've got a white gauge. My tachometer has gotten even more intense.
And literally that is taken right from the LFA or the LC500. So it's a nice looking gauge display.
It is, yeah. I really appreciate good gauges. A lot of cars don't. I feel like they don't put a lot of design effort into them, or they kind of phone it in. This is really pretty nice. And as you see cars evolve where you don't really need big gauges, we can have these LCDs in the dashboard. You can show a lot more information, and the nice thing is you can customize how it's displayed.
Right.
I had a 2010 Range Rover that had one of the first full-size, it was like a 12-inch LCD as the gauge cluster, and it was actually really disappointing because all that Land Rover did was draw a picture of the 4 dials you would have and put it in front of you on a screen. It was like, what was the point of this?
So it was very basic compared to nowadays.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But now, on all of these cars, the digital displays, you really get a lot of information here, and it's nice because you can customize it, whether it's based on the drive mode or whatever else. I'm going to throw this through a corner here. This is an off-ramp marked at 25. We're getting a little tire squeal at about 40-something.
He's definitely a race car driver.
But the thing is, so we just took this off-ramp. If there's any police or law enforcement watching, this was on a closed track that mimicked an off-ramp. But we just took that at roughly double the recommended speed. Got a little bit of tire howl, but the car stayed planted.
Remember, this has all-season tires.
And this is, it's on some all-seasons. Wide enough, not terribly wide. A 235 is not a huge tire in today's day and age, but certainly wide enough. Do it again here. We've got one more on-ramp, one more curve, and it's totally flat. And there are other cars that would have handled that with even more grace. But again, if you go back a generation or two in the ES lineup, or platform sharing Avalon Camry lineup, these cars did not handle like this. It's actually very impressive how stable it feels, and tire squeal is not necessarily an indicator of giving up grip. It's just the tire talking to you.
It's kind of funny too.
Oh, it's hysterical.
In this car, it's kind of hilarious.
Yeah, the fact that I just flung a Lexus through an off-ramp at some sort of speed while being able to talk on a camera, I think is pretty impressive, because if you get some body roll, you get distracted, you're trying to rein the car in, and I wasn't really working very hard for it. So that was pretty good. Let's get around this. If you heard that little beep, it's because I tried to call for a downshift and there were not enough revs available to do it.
So it basically said shift
So
denied.
yes.
Sorry.
It turned me down. I made a small advance and it said no thanks. But yeah, it's a very nice car to drive. Like you said, Lexus was trying to appeal to a younger market, and I can certainly see where they're doing that. And I think this model in particular, being the F Sport with the visual touches, the nicer steering wheel, the better seats, the more interesting interior. It's not the beige interior and faux wood trim that you would get on a typical Lexus from a long time ago.
Although you still can get a beige interior in this. On the other luxury.
If you really want, you can get a beige interior.
But hey, Lexus came out with this F-Sport model because they wanted younger male buyers. And
right.
I think they're going to attract a few. I don't know if something like you and I would buy, we would buy something like this, but if we were going to look for a commute, something to drive it a long distance in, and you want it to be a little bit more distinctive, they've certainly succeeded in building something like that.
Yeah, they have. And going back to the size comparison of this to its competition, I know Lexus seems to want it compared to the more entry-level size vehicles. But really, if you're someone our age looking for an entry-level Lexus, they have the IS. You don't get the back seat room. So this is really for someone that wants something that you can either carry a bunch of friends around in, carry your family around in, or if you have business clients. ES initially stood for executive sedan, so that's kind of the vibe and the size they were going for, and I think it does deliver on that front. So I could see if you were, younger, upwardly mobile, wanting a car that you can take your clients around in, or take some friends out to dinner here and there. This is the right size, and it's certainly nicer and appeals to that younger audience with the styling and some of those driving dynamics. Now, two more things that Sophion alluded to at the start of this video that we haven't discussed yet are both sales figures and price. Now, the Lexus ES lineup as a whole is the third best-selling lineup for the company. That comes in behind the RX and the NX. That being said, the sales figures have started to shift ever since the RX was new in the late 90s. When you look at what you get for your money, this F Sport is fairly well equipped. There might be an option or two that this particular model doesn't have, and this one comes in around $52,000. Now, the Acura that we had at the start of this video is similarly fairly well equipped with the A-Spec options, and that one stickers around $56K. So if you're looking for one vehicle that can really do it all for about the same amount of money, it's pretty tough to consider anything but a crossover just due to the increased versatility, storage space, things like that. So that's why you have seen all these OEMs switch to a more sporty look, better driving dynamics, and in some cases a little more power. Now, Lexus chose not to add power to this because they felt the corporate V6 was punchy enough, and I think it is. I don't know how much power you need to go to work, especially in the DC metro area. We can't use even the 300 horsepower this has. That being said, the athletic looks, the slightly more athletic suspension, the better seats, all of these things add up to an ES that is far nicer and better to drive than any ES was before. And I really think that Lexus has done a nice job setting this apart from the pack just a little bit with all the looks. That being said, I'd really like to thank Sophion and Redline Reviews for having me as a guest presenter today. Again, my name is Jake, and I'm with OutMotorsports.com. Take a look on my website. I'll have a brief write-up about my experience with this Lexus coming up very soon. Make sure to subscribe and follow along for more videos from Redline. That being said, when you look at the amount you're spending, this ES350, like I said, it's the F Sport model. Shit. I see how this is hard for you.